All right. Welcome everybody to Ask Me Anything, freeform Q&A with smart people from Santa Barbara's arts and culture scene who've got stories to tell. I am your host, Casey Caldo, the managing director of the Arts Collaborative, and our guest today is Ninette Paloma.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm starting us just slightly slow to give everybody a chance to sort of jump on the live stream and start watching before I give away any information that you're gonna be sad you missed. But I believe the stream is functioning correctly.
Okay.
And so here we go. All right, I'm gonna add the first comment to encourage everybody to ask questions.
Okay.
Very good. All right. So as I've said, our guest today is Ninette Paloma. Ninette is the artistic director of the Santa Barbara Center for Aerial Dance and a contributing writer for the Santa Barbara Independent, Santa Barbara Magazine, and Santa Barbara Danceworks, and the author of The Beautiful Month. I'll be posting links to all of those in the show comments after the fact. The Center for Aerial Dance is also a company in residence of the Community Arts Workshop. Yes. For the past 14 years, the Center for Aerial Dance has developed a uniquely inspiring movement style and rich teaching tradition. As I saw Ninette write somewhere, we're working to encourage strong, hardworking, confident, emotionally intelligent, and artistically aware human beings that move through their everyday with chins higher and shoulders more defined. I find that Ninette's writing relishes the sensuous, delicious food, complex wine, art, delving into and dancing with the complexities and culture in human beings. Her choreography and teaching combine rigor and wonder. So I'm very excited, and we're very excited to talk to Ninette about founding and growing her company, the relationship between being a writer, a dancer, choreographer, teacher, and business owner, and how those roles interact. I'm very much hoping to field questions on running a business, cultivating an artistic practice, and adapting to change, among many others. So I encourage everybody to submit whatever questions that occur to you in the comments right here on Facebook, and I'll pass them right on to Ninette as we go through. So Ninette, to kind of get us started, I've started these last few interviews by asking folks a question to kind of get a sense of where all this started for them, the origins of their creative practice, their stance toward the world. So I've been starting by asking some kind of question about the person's first experience of art as a kid, or some moment of just kind of getting completely sucked in and absorbed by a subject. Like, what's that? Look at that. And for you, it may be a way to get started. I read that you kind of got sucked into the circus as a kid and started training there.
I did, although really my artistic inspiration started almost immediately. I come from a family of artists, opera singers and fine artists and theater directors and chefs and writers. And my mom automatically assumed that both my sister and I were going to fall into that at various aspects. And my sister right away took to fine art. She had a way with a brush and color, and so did my mom. So when my mom handed me a paintbrush at a very young age, she assumed that I too was just going to start to flourish, and not so much. That was definitely not my strong suit, which is when my mom said, well, maybe theater, maybe we should introduce some theater. And theater was big for me growing up, as was dancing. So there was a real sense of that trifecta of that singing and acting and dancing. And then I just turned 18, and I had moved out of the house and had started college, and felt completely and utterly lost in this new world in a town called Normal, Illinois. And I know it's so ironic. And saw an ad for an open call for a Midwestern circus. You know, I had done some gymnastics in my past and thought, well, I should just go check this out. And walked into this huge big top with, clowns on skates and people on flying trapezes and teeterboard acts. And I was smitten. I was like, sign me up. What do I do? This is what I want to do. And, you know, it's very territorial, those kinds of old world disciplines. And so I wasn't auditioned so much as asked and, you know, invited back for about a series of 8 cuts. And on the 8th one, they were like, well, pick an apparatus and do something on it. And then let's see what happens. So I grabbed an umbrella. I picked the tight wire and did a little dance, did some movements, jumped over people on the tight wire. And they were like, okay, how would you like to tour with us, you know, for the rest of the season? And I was like, yes, sign me
That's
up.
incredible. Had you ever done anything like that before? Had you done some dance, or so you just kind of followed your?
Well, I done the gymnastics and dance.
Right.
And so, you know, everything really felt, even at that early stage, that one artistic endeavor informed another. So it never occurred to me that they were separate. I felt like I was pulling from that same discipline that I used for gymnastics when I got onto that tight wire. And that same artistic expression from theater just, you know, really took off when I started performing.
So how long were you in that circus for?
So I did that for a year and I loved it so much that I actually wanted to move back to Chicago, which is where I'm from originally, and wanted to enroll in an actual formal circus school, which in Chicago they have. It's an incredible place called the Actors Gymnasium, and I started taking lessons with them, and it was amazing. It was life-changing.
That's awesome. So one of the questions that I had was just about the methods of the aerial dance, and I love the way that of course you're a writer, so the writing that you guys have on the descriptions of your programs and how you do things. I mean, you've written somewhere that what really defines the Center for Aerial Dance is the possibility that it might actually have a lasting impact on how you walk through the world. We live for standing by your side as you discover your potential is greater than anything you could have imagined, and that the principles of a strong aerialist carry seamlessly into the virtues of an integrity-fueled individual. I'd love it if you could just talk a little bit more about that and maybe share a story or two about that in your work and working with students.
Oh, absolutely. We knew from the beginning that aerial dance was a vessel. It was not going to be our end game. It was a means to, or a tool to use as a way for people to start breaking open this idea that they were more than their face value, and that there were things that they hadn't discovered about themselves, that they never even imagined they had within. Those were the things that we wanted to coax out. And I have to tell you that when you are in survival mode, which you are in for most of your aerial dance training, you are so worried about making sure you're not going to fall that you end up breaking open pretty quickly. So all of that vulnerability and that raw energy just starts bubbling to the surface at a very early stage. And you can do a couple of things with that. You can sit with that and sift through it and really use that to get to know who you are as a human being and what you bring to artistry. Or you can, turn the other way and run screaming. And we've had both. We've had both. But those who stay, those who dare to imagine themselves as something just transformational are rewarded with such an honest and expressive and multi-dimensional art form that that really balances your warrior and your poet. So that athleticism, that raw brute power, and then also that delicate dance, the idea that you're not completely in control and you're going to have to surrender a little bit too.
Mm. That was beautiful. Yeah, so I mean, I was sort of, I think one of the first things I was taken in by what you said was just kind of describing like it in those early moments of just kind of trying to hang on and not fall. It becomes somehow impossible to keep the kind of cool facade that we all try to keep going. And you see
Exactly.
that kind of crack.
Absolutely. And I think that I find that that's the most beautiful aspect when completely confident, well-seasoned dancers or artists come in to the aerial studio and are like, well, I do this so well. I'm sure that this is going to be a lot more of the same. And when it's not, that's where I find the beauty, when you're at your rawest and most vulnerable. And it's a tough place to be. It's not a comfortable place to be, but what can emerge from that scary space is something so altruistic and stunning. I love digging into that.
Mm. Yeah, that comment makes me think of another question that I had, which is because you're talking about how the things that you've been holding on to as the skills that you have and the experience that you have are often no longer relevant, and you just kind of have to gut it out and figure it out and grow and adapt. One of the questions that I had was how you have felt that your practice has prepared you for the crazy time that we're in right now, where again, it's so many of the assumptions and securities that we have counted on and assumed were reliable have turned out to not be so. So yeah, I mean, one of the questions that I had was how have you felt that your practice has prepared you for that, and maybe how it hasn't?
Yes, that's an amazing question, because whereas I feel other genres really rely on improvisation when things go awry, um, we don't call that improvisation in our studio. We train rigorously for safety and confidence, and we never perform something that we don't feel we're 110% ready to. And then we surrender to come what may. And come what may always arrives. So you've got your apparatus doing something you never thought. You have the audience reaction, um, turning your work into a different dimension. You approach it from a different way instantaneously. And none of how we react to that is improvisational. We are absolutely fluid artists, and we are reacting and then modifying what we're doing in relation to our environment. And we have to do that time and time again. We have to be prepared to be able to not work when things are going beautifully, but what are we going to do when things aren't going how we assumed they were going? And so the moment this hit, it felt like more of the same. And because we're in residence at CAW, and the moment we started to hear grumbles about a possible governor's order and a stay-at-home order, um, our studio already began transitioning into, okay, great. Well, why don't we see what we can do and start talking about some of the way we can use this time and use this format to really express what's happening now.
Mm. Yeah, it was really cool to see you guys pivot so quickly to the online videos, and for everyone watching along, if you haven't seen the videos that the Center for Aerial Dance created, and sort of the first early week when there were some restrictions, but not all of the ones that we're facing right now, those are available on the Aerial Dance website, and they're really just inspiring.
Well, they're so honest. It was,
Yeah.
and when I look back at them now, I'm so grateful that we had that. It was that limbo stage where things don't feel the way that they feel now. There was a real sense of newness and a suspension of belief, and all of those feelings.
Mm.
And each and every piece reflects the artist, just really reconciling with all of those different emotions. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a really inspiring combination of vulnerability and strength in those videos.
Yeah.
I do. I'm sort of interested in what you said about how that aerial dance prepares you for a response that isn't improvisation, that it's based on rigorous training and practice and focus. Because yeah, I mean, I think in my background as a theater, like the word improvisation, I think it comes naturally to mind. So I like that. I find that very interesting.
Well, in the aerial dance world, saying that you're improvising almost releases you from any ownership of what you're going to do, and we feel that we need to empower an artist. You're not just letting go. If you were going to improvise and just let everything go, you tumble down to the floor. So there's a real sense of, okay, what are you going to do with next? And there is a real sense of confidence and training that goes behind that thought process. And so we really want to empower our artists to own that next step and then to cherish it, even if it goes completely awry and unlike anything you thought it would. I find those performances and those instances just for me to be the most arresting, the most entertaining.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. Well, let me shift gears slightly here. I'd love to talk a little bit about just your life as an entrepreneur and running various businesses and how that's worked for you. So I'd love to hear you talk, just kind of walk us through a little bit about the left and right turns, the uphills and downhills of your business career. I read somewhere that your first business was actually a jewelry boutique, and that aerial dance was sort of a hobby, something that you did just because you loved it initially.
Absolutely. In Chicago, the circus school that I talked to you about was actually next door to my metalsmithing shop. So I had heard about this incredible goldsmith in Chicago and really wanted to train under him. And my sister and I both did. And we spent a lot of time with goggles and a flex shaft and a torch. I'm outside, so I think you can hear sirens.
Yeah, we can hear the sirens a little bit. So we're sort of doing this call right in the middle of the evening winds. So yeah, but you're coming through great. You're doing great.
So I had always assumed that I would make jewelry and eventually have a little boutique and then just do aerial dancing on the side as just this beautiful release and this counterbalance. And that worked for quite a few years. I had a boutique in Chicago. We had one here in Santa Barbara, and everything was exactly as I thought it would be. And then I completely shifted gears in 2006. I'm gonna let that pass. Is it loud?
It's not too bad.
It's not too bad. Yeah, I think it's gonna pass right now.
Yeah.
But
so you said you shifted gears in 2006.
I did. I had a big life-changing shift. I got divorced and completely just kind of stood still for a while and said, what do I want to do with my life? And the idea of going back to retail and staying with retail just seemed like somebody else from another time. There was a real pull to do something artistically creative that allowed much more interaction with people and tactile movement and a real kinetic energy that I was craving at the time. And I started working.
How long did that sort of liminal space last, that period of kind of trying to figure out, what do I want in this new time? And how long did that shift take for you?
Well, I'll be honest, it was pretty instantaneous. It felt
Huh.
like I woke up one spring day and felt like the life I was leading was not the life for me. I
Wow.
had somehow overnight, as spring also broke open personally. And so it was just a real sense of, okay, what do I need to do to begin shifting gears? And you know how the universe works. You just have to open up your heart and open up your eyes and ask for what it is you need. And then little things start to fall into place. And it was one small thing after the other. It was the Libero Theater wanting to do a summer program for some funding that they had had. And would I like to be the aerial dance director for it? And it
Hmm.
was easy and non-committal in terms of it was just a temporary thing. So I could try that on without any real fear of having to rope myself into something. And that morphed into one of the most enjoyable summers I've ever had, to students wanting to do something after school. And I had just recently purchased a downtown loft that had ridiculously high ceilings. So I could rig in my loft and
And
started.
that's where you were living. You started right there in the
Impressive.
loft.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So I was living there. And then in the fall of 2006, I started with 5 students from my Libero summer program who had transitioned into a small after school program. And then everything just evolved from there. Yeah,
What a great story. Love
it's
that.
great. It was
Yeah,
great.
I also read somewhere you'd quoted you wrote somewhere that you'd heard from a businessman giving advice at sort of the end of his career, saying don't grow, change,
Yes, that is
which
my
I
mantra. Yes,
yeah, which seems to really fit with what you're talking about here.
absolutely. And, you know, when you dedicate yourself to the arts, you would be foolish not to also equally dedicate yourself to a business mentality. But the business models that I had kind of searched for and researched for, I wasn't finding. I was finding old school ways that was, you know, work hard, with that extra money, expand, with that extra money, expand. And there was just that formulaic way of running a business. And for some people that works, and it works wonderfully. But when I heard, and it was actually Michael Pollan's father, who many people don't know, was a financial guru and an author in his own right. And
Hmm.
he wrote the series of books, Live Rich and then Die Broke. And they were life changing for me. And I was reading them at, 19, and
Hmm.
was just eating them up. And one of the things that
So
really
at
stuck
19,
with
have you kind of always wanted to run a business and be an entrepreneur?
Yes, I always knew I was going to go into business for myself. I had tried on many, many hats, and I laugh at how many hats I tried on at the time. But now I realize that had I not gone through that process, I would have never really understood uh, what gratifies me, what brings me pleasure. So I tried so many different things. And then one day I was like, no, I think going into business for myself feels more authentic. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And then,
awesome.
and so the don't grow change was basically, listen to your clientele, listen to your environment, react to what's going on around you, really evolve according to needs as they shift, and be fluid. And that idea felt a little more holistic to me than the idea of, no, no, in order to be taken seriously, or to gain any real weight, you're just going to have to keep growing. You know, it didn't sit well with me. And I'm so glad I didn't take that model, because I have truly been able to evolve in a way that I think feels both safe and also successful by simply watching the world around me and then reacting accordingly.
Mm. And I think maybe that explains, or maybe partially explains, why, you know, you're not just running an aerial dance company. You're also a writer. You've also had all these different, you have this very adaptive attitude.
Absolutely. And I have to say, it's never occurred to me to feel like I was putting on different hats. My writing feels like I'm choreographing. It physically feels that way. In fact, when
it kind of feels that way in reading it. It sort of feels that it has kind of a dancery relationship to the world around you.
Well, that's good. That's good. That makes me happy to hear, because if I'm having trouble with the paragraph and I feel like I'm not really getting to the essence of somebody's story, I stand up and I take a walk around the block, or I putz around in my garden for a little while. And that kinetic movement just allows me to get right back into that place. And then I sit back down and I finish that piece. And I know I'm not the only one that feels that connection. It's the only way I've ever approached all of the artistic endeavors, you know, that I've been accomplishing. So.
I love that. And I think, you know, one of the other reasons why I kind of latched onto that quote of "don't grow and change," it seems particularly timely right now, both because so much change is required of us from coronavirus, but also more broadly, kind of the recognition that clinging too fiercely to this idea of like growth, no matter what the cost, has wrought incredible environmental damage on our natural world. And this seems to offer some kind of an alternative to that way of thinking of business.
Absolutely.
Ninette, are you still there? I think my connection just got a little unstable.
Model of business. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Are you back? Okay. I feel that
just keep going.
The structure of the structure of a business model where you have this one leader at the very top, and that person just simply kind of makes all of these decisions in this, like, you know, little petri dish, or, you know, and then just kind of spews it out and everybody else follows along, doesn't feel right with our world currently. Our studio was built on the idea of radical interdependence, the idea that it's not just one dancer coming in and working on their own and working along this isolated idea that they've got these goals to meet. Their success is dependent on the person to the right and the person to the left, because they're reacting to what the people around them are doing. So if the person to my right is having an amazing day, I feel inspired by their amazing day, especially when I'm having a pretty difficult day. And when the person to my left is having a rotten day, I feel so good being able to offer my support to that person. And so the idea that we're all really interconnected, and while also moving at our own pace, I feel just feels much more authentic and organic than this idea of a bunch of individual dancers coming in, doing their thing and leaving.
It makes a lot of sense. You seem to have a finely honed taste for what makes you happy. And it's driven your choices. You know, you founded Center for Aerial Dance because you loved it, and other people did too. Your travel and your food writing is written with just kind of a clear relish for the subject. How did you tune that radar? Has it ever let you down?
No, it has never let me down, and I owe it all to my mom, who is truly the pinnacle. She is the litmus test of someone who finds pure and unapologetic joy in every aspect of her life. I have never met someone so grounded and someone so unwilling to take life for granted. And it is that core value that I grew up in that has really formed the person that I am truly. I owe that to my mom. She is an unwavering light of optimism and hope. So in my home, there's never, yeah, that's not going to happen. It's more, how can we make something happen? What can we do with what we have? And so there's a real sense of working with what we've got within our means and really relishing every moment. And so when I travel, if things go awry, if a museum that I really wanted to go to was closed, or the restaurant that I really wanted to go to is full, or any number of those things, it has never occurred to me to feel as though my vacation or my experience, it was a bust as a result of it. I just don't see life like that.
Yeah, I love that, and I just love. I really enjoy that in reading your writing. It's just the sense of like you picked this thing because you really like it and you're going to enjoy writing about it. And you sort of, and you're talking about how you feel like a dancer in writing, in when you're writing, that you don't see those things distinguished. I mean, I noticed that in the way that you write, that when you're talking to someone or describing an interaction, that there is sort of this feeling of playfulness and sort of working through that interaction in a way that's it feels like dance.
Well, I have to say too that I take my craft very seriously, and every dancer that comes into our studio knows that. We never play at what we do. In fact, I don't think I've ever used that term. We use the word exploration a lot, and the idea of immersing yourself into something, but we take what we do really seriously, mostly because of the safety factor of it. We have to be really focused. It's not, we can't really leave our head and our presence and our consciousness, when we're 18 feet in the air. It's just not a smart thing to do. So there's a real sense of being very keen and observant to what's going on. And yet there is so much joy in that. A dear colleague of mine who was with Alvin Ailey for many years said that what she heard the most during her training was technique will set you free. And I truly believe that as well. I believe that once you have the solid tools in place and the confidence that you know exactly what you're doing, how things work, you've picked them apart and you've trained diligently through them, then you can really open up to the expression. You can really bring out that sense of playfulness inside of you, that emotion inside of you. And that goes with my writing as well, and with every aspect of our business. Yeah.
Well, Ninette, thank you so much for joining us. And everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. I will be posting below links to Ninette's work to follow along. And this link with the video will stay live, so pass it on to your friends. And Ninette, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you back at the Community Arts Workshop once and as soon as that becomes feasible.
Yes, Casey, I miss you. I miss seeing you across the way in the building. You know, we hadn't touched on the residency partnership, but being at the Community Arts Workshop with you and as part of the Arts Collaborative has also really helped define the next chapter of our studio and of our approach. And we love being there. If there are any students tuned in, I miss you terribly. I can't wait for all of us to be back together again. And it'll happen soon when it's safe.
Thanks so much, Ninette. Yeah, it's been a huge pleasure having the Center for Aerial Dance as a company in residence. It's just a wonderful example of what the CAW exists for, to support local companies like yours. And can't wait to have you guys rolling back in the doors.
Me too. Me too.
All right.
All right, Casey. So good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.